Hello, I'm Nitai Duranja, and we're finishing off on this video the fourth of the stages of maturity from the book Education for Life by my teacher, J. Donald Walters. And I'm sharing vignettes from that kind of illustrate the points that he makes in this book. So today, we're reading about the thoughtful years, or the years of the intellect. This is from 18 to 24. An important aspect of reasoning correctly is to understand the difference between reason and discrimination. A line of reasoning will be false if its premise is wrong. Often, however, reason alone is inadequate to the task of evaluating the merits of a premise, hence the necessity for discrimination. Discrimination is based on intuition. It is calm inner feeling held in a state of reason, but guided through deeper levels of consciousness. Intuition is calm awareness of what feels right inwardly, literally in the heart. It is the surest basis for making right decisions. So here, the emphasis is on combining these tools of maturity, the intellect, but not by itself. The intellect by itself can be very ruthless, very insensitive, and to be a fully developed person with balanced growth. Education for Life says intellect needs to be balanced with reason. Intellect needs to be balanced with feeling, which we'll talk here, but also with will and the body. Somebody with a strong intellect but a damaged body or an unhealthy body, to some extent they'll be compromised and won't be able to be as effective. Even more so with the will. If someone has an undeveloped will, they can have all these wonderful ideas, but they never put anything into practice. And here we're talking today about the feeling. How do we work with the intellect to know whether it's going to be helpful for other people and for ourselves? And trying to cultivate this intuitive ability that exists within all of us, but is actually usually really undeveloped unless you went to a very special school or had very special parents who valued that. But it is the wave of the future if we're going to survive on this planet. So my first experience of this happened before I was still a college student myself, before I became a teacher. And this was back a long time ago for all of you. It was back in the 1960s. And when I was at a campus that was very involved in, at that point the Vietnam War was happening. And there was a lot of resistance, anti-war rhetoric on the campus. And I was caught up in it. I couldn't see the reason for that particular war. And had been attending various functions. They called them teach-ins or just demonstrations, things like that sort. But after I'd been doing it for a couple of weeks, I started to have a funny feeling. So I would listen to these speakers, and they were all very passionate, and they were, trying to convince us that this is the direction to go, was to resist this war. But I started to notice a difference between the quality of the speakers. Some of them, there was a deep sincerity and a courage that to put their, in a way, put at least part of their lives on the line. Many of them were facing a prison sentence for refusing to enter the army. But there was others who were equally vocal, and even more so sometimes. But there was no, this feeling quality was missing. They were just out there to get attention. They were, from an Education for Life perspective, you can call them ego active. They were trying to make themselves important, and the cause was secondary. And I could see the difference, and I started, that's interesting. And I made my decision at that point, okay, I'm going to go along with these people where I feel the sincerity of their convictions in how they present themselves, and I'm going to avoid these other people who seem to be just revving up kind of wild energy, not a constructive energy. So that was my introduction So when the book came along and I read that, oh yeah, I certainly agree with that. Feeling has a real role to play in the development of the intellect. So many years later, I was sharing these ideas in India, and watching a much younger group. But the teacher had been talking to them about kind of the quality of sincerity and courage, and when standing up and thinking for yourself and making your own decisions. And the students were paying attention to some extent, but there was a group of boys kind of in the back, which is where the troublemakers usually gather in the classroom, and they were kind of snickering a little bit to each other. But then the teacher asked one of the girls, and she had an example, and the girl told a beautiful example of, I can't remember the details now, but it's just standing up for yourself, thinking things through, and making a decision based on your higher sensitivities. And when she finished, one of the boys in the back of the room just started going very sardonic, I think is the word, very disrespectful, just like, yeah. And the other boys that were around him all of a sudden started doing the same thing. And the teacher caught it as a teachable moment. And she says, okay. And she turned to not the leader, but she turned to one of the boys and said, why are you clapping? And he got all flustered and just, well, I don't know. I think I'm clapping because he was clapping. And then she went around the circle, and all the boys, they didn't have a good reason. And she said, this is exactly what we're talking about. We want your behavior, your actions have to reflect your own values, your own sensitivities. And that's not what happened here. The girl was telling the story, she experienced it, but by your response, I can see that you haven't learned that lesson yet. And she brought it right down to their behavior level and gave them this, think before you act, and think in terms of what's going to be helpful for the people around you, what's going to have this other dimension to it. So I really appreciated that the teacher could catch that moment in the classroom. So you're looking for any way you can do it to bring this idea of introspection and feeling. It's maybe somebody asked me just recently, what's the most important thing for education for life? And I said, I think it's the ability to introspect that is cultivated in all the students. They are many different ways they're asked to share their feelings, share their thoughts, and to find out what do I think? Like in that situation with where the boys weren't doing that, the teacher's taking the time to stop, introspect, what was going on there. So the comment I had many years ago, one of the people who had worked with several of our kids just said to me one time, said, your kids are different, your students are different. And I said, why? What did you say that? And they said, they know who they are. And I thought, that's a beautiful compliment. I'm very happy to accept it for us, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't know who they are. And they maybe get to be 35, 40 years old, and why am I doing this? Why is my life not working? But through these kind of practices, children as young as 5 and 6 even, they start to be able to know who they are and why they do things. So it's our goal. Thanks.